So let me tell you why getting out of debt is not practical. It's not a realistic goal if you're, a millennial or younger. So I did the Dave Ramsey's course for a few years. And if you don't know what it is, a quick rundown. Basically, you know, it's the snowball pay off your debt thing. You've probably heard of this. You just cut all your extra spending. You cancel your Netflix. Take that extra $15 a month, every little dime that you can, and pay it towards your smallest amount of debt, like your credit card or whatever. And then once that's paid off, you take all that money that you were paying towards your credit card and pay it towards, the next thing, your car payment or whatever. You get that paid off, and you take all that money combined, pay it towards your student loans, your house, get your house paid off early, max out your retirement, and retire a millionaire. I just told you Dave Ramsey's entire book, which is a great idea. And I know my parents, they did it and stuff and had success with it. Here's the issue. So I cut out, I literally didn't eat because I'm we have to figure out a way to come up with extra money. And I work 10, 15, 20 hours overtime a week. And I'm we don't have any extra. I can't. I'm not paying for Netflix already. I can't just cancel it and have an extra money. And so I just stopped eating. I stopped eating lunch and, because that's $50 a week or whatever in lunch that you're spending. So I quit eating lunch. That's where I got my extra money. And I worked as much as I could. And I went completely broke every week. I spent every dime out of my bank account. Other than, whatever, $20 to keep it from going negative or whatever. And I paid everything on our credit cards because, we had a couple $1,000s in credit card debt. We just bought our first house in 2020, which is a terrible time to buy a house. And I got that paid off. Got the credit card paid off. Finally, let's start paying extra on my truck to get rid of my, vehicle loan. Well, that was extremely hard to do because if you remember anything about 2020, 2021, 2022, gas prices were, highest on record, $6 a gallon. It was costing me $100, $120 a week just to drive to work in gas. Grocery prices doubled, my electric bill doubled, all this stuff, right? So I really didn't have any extra money to pay on my vehicles. But, I did. I paid a couple extra, payments on it, and I got it paid off maybe 6 months early. And then I was like, hey, I'm going to have $450 a month to pay towards, I was going to pay towards my wife's car and get it paid off, twice as fast, basically double the payments on that. And then take our tax refund every year and pay it on it and all this stuff and get it paid off. And then we can pay off our student loans, and then we can finally have some money 10 years from now, if we stay on track and do absolutely nothing except pay off debt, no vacations, no extra anything. Maybe in 10 years, we'd be able to finally save money, be financially stable, buy another house, all this stuff. Joke's on you. I paid my truck off, and within a few months, it was everything, my house payment, the bank mismanaged my escrow, and 1 month my house payment was just $200 more. And I called them, and they're like, oh yeah, sorry. The electric bill started going up. I went from getting $200, $300, electric bills to $400, $500. It was insane. Which the electric company got sued because they were, I guess, screwing people over, but then they kind of went down after that. But the craziest thing was, my wife and son, because I had just had my son, he was about a year old, and he got dropped off Medicaid, okay? And he had to have tubes put in his ears, all at the same time, right? And so I have no insurance, and you would think, getting tubes put in your ears would be $1,000. No, it's $11,000. And so a cash price on that, I paid all of my savings out, $3,000 in cash that I had to pay him up front for them to do the surgery, which, by the way, we had to wait 8 months to get him in for this operation, which takes 4 seconds to do, but whatever. And yeah, so they dropped him off Medicaid, so I had to pay for that. I still have medical debt from that I haven't paid. It's in collections because screw them. And then I had to turn around and get insurance on my wife and son. I didn't even have insurance because, who cares if I get sick and die as long as my wife and kid are taken care of, because that's all I can afford to do. That's $600 a month for like not real insurance. Like, it doesn't cover anything until you spend, whatever, $7,500 deductible before they cover a single dime of anything. That's the kind of insurance you get for $600 a month. And so not only, like, I went from, I was going to have an extra $450 a month to now I need an additional like $200, $300, $400 a month on top of the $400 that I was already supposed to, save and roll into paying off more debt. And every month the bills go higher, everything just goes up, and I can't work any more hours than I do. Like, there's only so much time in a day. So it's impossible to find any extra money, and you just can't keep up with the price of inflation. You can't keep up with the cost of living. You can't keep up with the housing market. You can't keep up with the, fuel prices doubling because we bomb Iran or whatever. We went from spending, like $150 a week on groceries to like $300 a week in groceries. That's just dinner. That's just if we buy like all the frozen crap that we eat for dinner. That's nothing else. So the only option that you have is to figure out how to make a crap ton more money. Because honestly, since the year 2020, when I bought my first house, to now, I need an additional $1,500 a month is how much my bills have went up. And I've paid stuff off. I haven't gotten more debt. I haven't gotten more stuff. I've paid stuff off. But just the basic stuff, like the house payment, the electric bill, the insurance, all this stuff just keeps going up and up and up. And you can't keep up with it. So unless your employer is going to give you like a 20-30% raise every year just to keep up with the cost of inflation and crap, then you're not going to get out of debt. If you want to live any kind of life, don't worry about debt. Use it. Get it. Rack up some credit cards, whatever. Make the minimum payments on it. Who cares? Enjoy your life while you can, especially if you have little kids. Don't worry about it, I could work my life away. I could go get a job making double what I do now, and I could live at work and be rich. But I would give up all the time with my son. So I trade that. I use debt and credit cards and whatever else so that I can spend time with my son while he's little. Because there isn't any option. Like Dave Ramsey's assumption is that we're all just, you're going to Starbucks every morning. That's $50 a week. And you're paying for Netflix. That's $20 a month. And, you're going out to eat. That's $400 a month, and I'm already not doing it. I have nothing to cut out. I'm not spending that extra money. I've always been financially responsible. Unfortunately, because what that's led to is my life just sucked. I never did anything fun with it, right? Except just work and try to not use credit cards and try to get out of debt. And look where it got me. Absolutely nowhere. I'm using credit cards and I'm in a bunch of debt. It doesn't matter what you do. You turn around and then, you're going to be completely out of debt, and then you're going to get slapped with a $30,000 medical bill because, you got to have your gallbladder taken out or something. Ask me how I know.
Hey YouTube, so online right now there's a growing conversation about how getting out of debt just doesn't feel realistic anymore for a lot of younger people, and especially millennials who have been dealing with modern cost of living pressure. A lot of people are pointing at budgeting advice, financial gurus, and real life expenses, and saying none of it seems to line up with what actually happens month to month. And in that previous TikTok, he talked about a lot of things, so I just want to give my take on it, you know what I mean? A lot of the discussion starts with the idea that traditional debt payoff plans sound more simple on paper, but completely change once real life gets involved. People hear strategies like the snowball method or the avalanche method, and it feels structured and almost guaranteed if you just follow it correctly. But the issue is that real financial life doesn't stay stable long enough for those systems to actually run smoothly from start to finish. Expenses shift, income changes, and unexpected costs interrupt the plan constantly. So even when someone is disciplined and consistent, it can still feel like the math just doesn't line up the way it's supposed to. That creates a growing feeling that personal responsibility alone isn't enough to fix everything. It also makes people question whether the system assumes a level of financial stability that most people don't actually have anymore. And once that doubt kicks in, the entire idea of quote-unquote just follow the plan and you'll be fine starts to feel less like advice and more like a theory that only works in perfect conditions. That disconnect is what pushes a lot of frustration in these conversations. Another major theme is how extreme people end up going when they're told to cut everything unnecessary to free up extra money. At first, the advice sounds reasonable, like cancel subscriptions, reduce eating out, or avoid small impulse spending. But for a lot of people, they reach a point where there isn't anything to cut anymore. It starts turning into cutting things that already feel like basic survival comfort instead of luxury spending. And when you hit that point, the strategy stops feeling empowering and starts feeling like deprivation with very little payoff. Even after making all those little cuts, the amount saved doesn't feel meaningful compared to the size of the debt being targeted. That gap between effort and result becomes really discouraging over time. It creates this mental block where people feel like they're doing everything right, but not actually moving forward in a noticeable way. And when progress feels invisible, motivation naturally starts to drop even if discipline is still there. So the system that's supposed to create control over money can end up feeling like it just reduces quality of life without solving the main issue. A big part of the frustration comes from how quickly everyday living costs have changed in the short amount of time we've had. Things like groceries, gas, rent, insurance, and utilities have all increased in ways that feel hard to mentally adjust to, even when people expect inflation. Even people who are extremely careful with spending notice that their baseline monthly expenses keep creeping higher and higher without them changing anything significant. That means budgets that used to work a few years ago suddenly stop working even if income stays the same. It's not always about lifestyle inflation either. It's just the cost of the exact same life going up. That shift makes debt payoff plans much harder because the leftover money that's supposed to go toward progress keeps shrinking or disappearing entirely. So instead of building momentum, people feel like they're constantly fighting just to stay in place. And when staying in place already feels like effort, progress starts to feel almost unreachable. That's where a lot of the idea that none of this actually works comes from in these discussions. One of the strongest points people bring up in these kind of conversations is how unpredictable life events can completely erase financial progress overnight. Even when someone is following a strict plan and doing everything quote unquote right, something like a medical issue can instantly change everything. Costs that seem manageable in theory often turn out to be far higher in practice, especially when insurance gaps or coverage issues come into play. And even with insurance, deductibles, approvals, and delays can make the situation feel overwhelming financially. That unpredictability creates a sense that long-term planning has a ceiling because you can't fully plan for sudden emergencies. It also shifts people's priorities very quickly from optimization to immediate survival and problem solving. In those moments, debt payoff strategies stop being the focus because just handling the crisis becomes the priority. And afterward, people are often left trying to recover from setbacks that weren't part of the plan they made. That experience reinforces the idea that financial stability isn't just about discipline, it's also about avoiding things you realistically can't predict or control. At the core of all this is a deeper tension between longer-term financial goals and short-term life reality. On paper, debt payoff plans promise a clear outcome in the future if you sacrifice consistently in the present, but in real time, the sacrifices happen during years where life is actively happening, and not waiting for financial goals to be completed. That creates a constant trade-off between building a better future and actually living in the present moment in a meaningful way. For a lot of people, especially those with families or responsibilities, the trade-off becomes emotionally complicated very quickly. It starts raising the question of whether delaying everything for years is actually worth the promised outcome at the end. Some people lean towards long-term discipline no matter what, while others start prioritizing time, experiences, and stability in the present instead. And many people end up somewhere in the middle, trying to balance both, but never truly and a lot of people end up in the middle, trying to balance both, but never fully successful in either direction. The tension is really what makes this conversation hit so hard for so many viewers, because it's not just about money, it's about how people are choosing to live their life under pressure.